Hello everyone. In this week's video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how to use the curves tool in Photoshop. Now, most of you guys probably shoot your images in RAW, and if that is the case, you know just how dull those RAW files can look. And those RAW files are dull because you want to have a lot of data that you can push and pull when you're post-processing. Now, this curves adjustment is going to help you bring out that dull photo and really bring it to life by adding contrast and color and really just toning an image. So in this video, we're focusing on exactly how to tone your image using the curves adjustment in Photoshop. This is such a powerful tool, and whether you're using Photoshop or not, it's a tool that you should know how to use. If you're not using Photoshop, you should be using this tool in Photoshop. It's just that powerful. I love using this tool. There's so many great ways to use it. So we're going to be covering it in this video. Now, a lot of you guys may be familiar with the levels tool. Don't worry too much about the levels tool. Just watch this video, learn exactly how to use the curves tool, and use this on your images. So I've got my image open in Photoshop here, and the first thing that I want to do is obviously bring up my curves layer. Now that can be found down here on the very bottom right. You can click this circle with a slash through it. That shows you all of your adjustment layers. Curves is going to be right here. And now I have curves open. Now, a lot of you guys may not have the properties tab. So if you don't have the properties tab and you open curves and you don't have another little box that pops up, go up to window and go down to properties, and then you'll get this graph here. I always like to store this above layers just so that it will sit up there and I can adjust it as is with my layers down here. So I just leave it up there. I recommend you do that as well, but definitely do it. Do however you would like. So I've got my curves here. Right now you can see it's not doing anything, but I've got options. So curves shows us a graph here, and this is a graph of where the lightness values of each pixel on the image lie. So you can see that we've got a big spike in the darks, which is going to be because of all of these dark areas over here. And it slowly tapers out to the brightest areas, and we only have a few pixels in the very brightest, which are going to be things down here in these waves and other light spots of the image. So this shows a graph. You don't need to worry really too much about it. It basically is the histogram of your image, but like I said, it's not a huge deal. You don't need to worry about what it looks like. What we do need to worry about is this line here. Now, the most basic way to use a curves adjustment, it would be to just create an S curve. So drag down near the bottom of the curve and up near the top. Basically what that would be doing is that's decreasing the lightness values of our dark pixels down here, and then up here, our lighter pixels that fall on this part of the graph are gonna be brightened. So that's the most basic way to use the curve, but there's actually many other ways to use this. Now, what I really like to do to tone my landscape images is to use these three eyedroppers here. Now what these eyedroppers are a black point, a white point, and a gray point. The gray point is not necessarily something that I use too often on landscape photography. The gray point would be great for something like portraits, where maybe you have a background and something is gray and it would be easy to balance out your white balance, but that's not how I go about it in landscape images. So I'm gonna not use this gray point here, but I will show you the white point and the black point. So first I'm gonna select the black point. So I'm gonna click this. Now you want to click a spot on your image that you want to be completely black, because it's going to make everything that's as dark as the spot that you click totally black. And so over here is probably my closest spot to something that I would want to be totally black in my image. So I'm going to click that. You can see how that really darkens things out. And now I'm going to grab the white point here, and I'm going to select my white point as probably this part of the wave right here that it should be completely white. I'm going to click that. Now you can see that it has already added a little bit of contrast to my image here, and I think that's already looking pretty good. So now we've got options. We're in RGB right now, which basically means we're going to affect all the red, green, and blue pixels, so everything in the image, but we can actually select colors, so we could add reds, greens, or blues individually. So usually what I like to do here is I'll balance the colors by using the curves adjustment. So for example, right now, I feel like the ocean here that's pretty bright is a little bit maybe too green. So I can go into the greens, and you can see that by doing the darks and the lights adjustment here, I've actually pulled up the green. So maybe I want to pull that back down just a little bit, and not too much. You can see just a little bit goes a long ways. So I can balance it just like that. Now it is definitely a little bit too purple. Okay, somewhere probably right about in there looks good. I'm going to go to blues because I feel like it's looking a little too yellow. So I'm going to grab this and kick some blues back into it. And this is a pretty basic way to balance the colors in your image. You definitely don't have to do the white balance adjustment here, but since this affects the kind of white balance of the image, I like to do it in here as well and just make it all done in one adjustment. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back to the RGB channel, which is where I spend most of my time. And like I said, I could just make a simple S-curve here to add contrast, but I actually want to do it a little more selectively. Anyone that shoots in RAW format knows that you need to add contrast to most images because usually they come pretty flat out of the camera, which is just a product of shooting in RAW. So you can grab onto the curve here. If you wanted to, say, make the darks a little bit brighter, I would grab onto this bottom of the curve and drag that up. Maybe I wanted to make the highlights a little less bright, and I'm going to drag that down. And now the cool thing about using curves to do this is that because everything is on a curve, you'll never experience clipping like you would using, say, a hue saturation slider or even overusing a shadows or highlights slider because it's all on a curve. So all the pixels are going to be selected when you're creating an adjustment. So even on an S curve here, everything is being adjusted. Even if it's right on the line, it's not being adjusted, but it's a smooth, basically gradient of adjustment that is applying. So that doesn't make sense. Don't worry too much. Just know that the curves is a great tool to use for doing this. I'm going to show you guys one more thing that I like to do. I like to grab this little hand or finger tool here, which allows you to click and drag in the image to modify the curve. So now I can select a point, and if you watch over here, when I move over the image, it's going to tell me where I'm selecting on that curve. So let's say that I thought that maybe it's a little bit too dark over here. So I could click and drag up and increase the brightness there. Maybe I wanted to increase the brightness of this white spot down here and make this a little bit brighter. I could drag that up. And maybe I want to reduce the midtones. So somewhere, let's say about in here. Let's reduce that back down. And you can just click as many times as you want. You never want to do too much with one adjustment here. So it's always important to do things in moderation because you can see that one adjustment can go a very long ways. So I'm feeling like that is looking pretty good there. When I toggle this, you can see that I haven't made a whole lot of changes over here in the shadows, but I've really helped to pop and correctly tone and color the ocean over here, which I'm really liking. Again, like I said, you can always go in and drag over here. You can use this button here. Really, there's a bunch of options that you can use, but that is how I go about kind of toning my image correctly, as well as making sure that the light values across the image are good. It's got good contrast and everything. This is always one of the first steps I'm taking on pretty much all of my photos. So it's a great thing to know how to use. Like I said, a lot of you guys may have used levels before. Just stop using levels and use curves. Curves is just a better version of levels, in my opinion. It gives you more customization options. And it's a little bit more difficult to use, but hopefully you can use this video and figure it out and really master it, because it's really going to help you guys take your landscape photography to the next level. Just like that, quick and easy, we have learned how to use the curves adjustment in Photoshop. I'm using this thing on all my photos pretty much right out of the get-go when I'm editing my images. So helpful for toning my images, so helpful for adding that contrast back in, making those highlights pop and those shadows darker. I just love this tool for so many reasons, and there's so many great ways to use it. Go ahead and give this tool a go the next time you pull up an image in Photoshop. I highly recommend just pulling up an image right now, rewinding the video, and just watching the video from the start again and following along with exactly what I'm doing, and do it to an image of your own. See how you like it. And of course, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys. Thank you guys so much for checking out this week's video, and I cannot wait to bring you guys another video next week. Thank you so much, and have a good one.